"Ma'am, could you show me your boarding pass, please? Just for this section. Our rules have changed a bit." The words slipped out with practiced calmness, hinting at something not said, as the clatter of rolling suitcases down the aisle stalled and the white noise of jet engines swelled faintly at the edge of hearing. Willa folded the financial newspaper she'd been reading and set it, with measured care, across the corner of her tray table. The gold fountain pen she'd been annotating with clicked close beside her. Her navy blazer caught the low cabin light, and the corner of her slim laptop peeked from a leather bag at her feet. She looked up, catching the eyes of at least two nearby passengers. One, a businessman who immediately flicked his gaze away, and another, a younger woman watching from across the aisle, thumb hovering uncertainly over her phone screen. The flight attendant, Ruth, pressed closer, holding out a hand just slightly unsteady, nails perfectly manicured, badge polished to a mirror shine. Her brows arched with a rehearsed helpfulness that felt like formality stretched too tight. "I know it's strange, but we're double-checking in premium tonight," Ruth said, smile fixed, voice dipped warmer but never quite friendly. "I'm in 2C, you can scan it," Willa replied, sliding the printed pass across her palm as though she'd been rehearsing the gesture in a board room all her life. The hush at her answer tugged at the edges of the cabin. Ruth scanned the barcode, her mouth tightening as the green confirmation flashed. Still, she hesitated. Her fingers tensed around her tablet. Sometimes upgrades don't process right, or a seat gets reassigned. Just checking, you know. Willa's answer was razor clean. "Are you verifying with everyone?" The words floated toneless, then disappeared under the returning drone of boarding banter. Ruth glanced around. Her hand adjusted the collar of her blouse, smoothing a wrinkle invisible to anyone else. "It's just a new thing tonight." Willa watched her, one finger tracing the edge of her folded boarding pass. On her wrist, her watch blinked the passing minutes, 12 till scheduled departure, and somewhere deep in her briefcase, an embossed itinerary with 3 time slots blocked in red. The cabin lights flickered once as another row filled behind her. The captain's voice echoed from the open cockpit door, faint and steady. Outside, the stormy evening painted the JFK tarmac a gleaming graphite, streaked by moving runway lights. The familiar pulse in Willa's jaw started, slow, inevitable. Boarding pass still clutched. Ruth hovered at the edge of the business class divide, glancing over her shoulder at a crewmate before ducking behind the galley curtain. All eyes drifted to Willa, then back to their devices, uneasy. Nothing about this flight would follow the script. Minutes before, as Willa took her seat, she'd noticed the neat circle of condensation on the tray beside her. Someone had been in 2C earlier, left in a hurry. The way the attendant's eyes kept returning to her row, the odorless insistence in her request, made it clear. This would not be routine. The day, already dense with its own obligations, wrapped tighter around her chest. She tucked her tablet away, palms resting on her knees. At her age, 56 going on tireless, she'd learned that silence could both inflame and diffuse, depending on how long you let it sit. Memories like newsprint smudge on fingers. On her last trip, she'd offered her window seat, downgraded that week for staffing, to an anxious mother and her toddler. "I've got work to do anyway," she'd smiled, watching them settle. Another time, a junior analyst on her team at the consulting firm had confessed, over tray-table coffee, that she worried no one listened to her suggestions on diversity hiring. "Sometimes you have to design the system yourself," Willa had replied. "Policy follows confidence." Willa's flaw, never letting up, never allowing herself to look uncertain, was a strength in the realm of high-stakes mergers, but tonight it sat heavily. The calendar ticking down, the board meeting awaiting her vote, and beneath it all, her refusal to let her guard slip, even here. The memory evaporated as Ruth returned, this time with a pinched smile and a new tactic. "I'm going to need to see some photo identification as well, just to match the ticket. Full compliance tonight, management's orders." Willa held out her driver's license, fingers steady. Ruth scanned it a moment too long, lips moving as if reading silently. "Middle initial doesn't match the manifest," she said in a tone meant to sound apologetic. "There's a W on the ticket, but your license is just Willa J. Curtis." A pause. "W is for Willa. The manifest is correct," Willa replied. Ruth's mouth twisted. "You understand, ma'am, for premium rows were required to match down to the letter. A few passengers have been caught using borrowed upgrades." She spoke in clipped, suggestive hints, a denial with the shape of an accusation. The air pressed in. On cue, the older man in seat 3B leaned in, muttering under his breath, "Had that happened last month at O'Hare? Security had to remove someone. Not fair to those who pay full price." Across the aisle, the young woman with the phone finally moved. The faint red dot of a recording app blinked on. Her voice was soft, hesitant. "Sorry, but are you really going to kick her out for a middle initial?" Ruth's head snapped up. "We're just ensuring everything matches. Some of our premium passengers have sensitive information on board." Willa set her elbows to the armrests, refusing to shrink. "Would you like to check the ticket again?" People tilted in their seats, faces caught in the glow of cabin LEDs. Ruth drew herself up. "I'll need to confer with my supervisor. Please don't leave your seat." She retreated into the galley, fingers tapping her tablet. The young woman's camera followed her, uncertainty giving way to purpose. Willa's watch blinked. 7 minutes now until doors close. The flight had become something else. Too many witnesses, too many questions. She pressed 2 fingers to her temple, then returned them to her lap, mind racing through memos and names, alliances and votes. This time the chase had found her at 35,000 feet, not in boardrooms, not on conference calls. And overhead the light blinked yellow again, paused, then went steady. She exhaled, slow and measured. She would count every move. Ruth reappeared with her supervisor, a man in late 30s, blazer crisp, graying at the temples. He bent to Willa, voice low, smile tight as a seatbelt. His badge flashed. "Samuel Parks, in flight lead." "Some confusion about your ticket, ma'am." His tone was practiced, almost bored. Ruth interjected, "There's a mismatch. I've seen it before. It's usually a system flag." Willa, voice level, replied, "Everything matches. Care to check?" Samuel stared at the tablet, his thumb flicking through screens. "System won't clear. This happens sometimes. We can seat you in economy until we sort it out." Gasps from 2 rows back. The livestream viewer count, 25, crawling higher. "What's the issue?" The question fell like a gavel. Samuel shifted his focus to the phone raised in row 2D, discomfort flickering as he noticed the blinking record. "It's just policy, nothing personal. I have an open seat for you in 17F. Willa's answer landed, each syllable cooled by experience. "That won't be necessary. I'll wait here for the captain." The silence bristled. Ruth and Samuel turned to one another, a wordless exchange of worry. From the rear, another bystander piped up, a gray-suited woman, voice sharp, siding with Ruth. "If protocol says move, people need to move. Some of us have connecting flights in San Francisco." Willa folded her jacket over her briefcase. The young woman kept her phone steady. "Viewer count, 50. Ruth returned again, this time with more insistence. "Last call, ma'am. We need to seat you properly to depart. Our on-time rating is at risk." Out of nowhere, the captain appeared, stepping into the aisle with the easy balance of someone who'd navigated 100 emergencies. His tie was slightly askew, giving him a rumpled credibility. "What seems to be the hold-up here?" Ruth jumped at the opportunity. "We've got a ticket mismatch in 2C. Guest won't comply with reassignment. Procedures require us to clear the section for verified passengers." The captain inclined his head, assessing the tableau. For the first time, the tension breached the galley curtains and seeped into first class. Willa lifted her laptop onto her knees, the lock screen glowing with a calendar entry. Board meeting, Pacific Equity Partners, 8:00 a.m. PST. The words blinked, intrusive in the low light. She angled the screen up, not quite openly, but enough that anyone glancing would read it. The captain's eyes lingered on her device before sliding back to Samuel. "Let me see that manifest." Samuel handed over his tablet, not meeting anyone's eyes. Ruth interjected, "I already verified ID and ticket. It doesn't match to the middle initial policy. Can you quote me the specific section in our manual governing that?" Willa's voice didn't tremble, but it didn't harden either, just steady, forensic. The captain paused, palming the tablet. "Which subsection did you mean, Ruth?" Ruth stammered, We were told, last all hands, every letter for security." Willa pressed her advantage gently. "I'd like to hear the policy cited if possible." The captain's brows furrowed. Suddenly, inquiry replaced irritation. He began flicking through procedure files, his finger tapping harder than before. As the argument played out, the livestream feed's viewer count doubled, then tripled, 80, then 200. Comments began appearing. "What's going on? That's not right. Is that the new CEO they just appointed?" Samuel shifted his posture, uncertain now, sweat beading on his hairline. Ruth, too, started wringing her hands at her sides. The captain paced back 2 steps, putting himself between Willa and the crew. "Let's get operations on the phone," he said, flipping his radio off mute. "HQ, this is Flight 1152, requesting confirmation for a premium seating manifest discrepancy." The conversation started, one side only, clipped and coded. "Yeah, it's a manifest flag on 2C, Curtis, Willa J. Confirming no, the badge says, yes, that's what I see here. Could you check the Delta list? No, middle initial is J, the ticket says W. Hold on." 2 tense beats. The captain's knuckles blanched against the tablet case. He glanced up at Willa, something midway between respect and wariness. The operations rep said something that made the captain's jaw move, then pause. "She's holding what position? Understood, understood. You want that route, you're sure?" His hand slowed. "Yes, she's booked for 2C. Yes, I have confirmation here. Are you sure about that? I copy that." He drew the phone from his ear, then blew out a careful breath. Ruth, peering over his shoulder, chewed her lower lip, a flush creeping up her neck. Samuel's feet shuffled, caught between protocol and a sinking, unspoken recognition. Silence crashed through the aisle. All the hum of the plane, the rattle of baggage bins, the squawk of the PA muted in 3 heartbeats. The captain turned, not to Willa this time, but to Ruth and Samuel. "We have a verification from corporate. Curtis is not only ticketed for this seat, she's a voting member of Pacific Equity's board, flying to attend the shareholder meeting. This flight is expressly under that corporation's contract. There's no mismatch." Ruth's shoulders dropped. Her clipboard hit her thigh with an audible slap. Samuel's hands twisted, fisted. For a moment, nobody moved. A whisper of the flight's white noise filled the vacuum. A pen rolled off a tray and clattered to the carpet. Then more words, this time from the captain, low and final. "We're not reseating Ms. Curtis. In fact, I'd like to know why you flagged her ticket at all. Was there an instigating incident?" Ruth's voice cracked, rising an octave. "It's been a long day, Captain. I just wanted the checks done properly." Samuel tried to salvage. "It was a system thing, that's all. No disrespect meant, of course." 3 rows up, the bystander in the gray suit looked down at her lap, suddenly consumed by her phone. The older businessman who'd muttered at the start now avoided Willa's gaze completely. The livestream's numbers now hovered at 1,500, trending, shared to a professional while black hashtag mid-flight. Comments, angry and incredulous, scrolled up faster than Ruth could track them. Willa spoke, soft, measured. "The system is what we make it." Her words held, the last thing spoken in the frozen aisle. Willa gathered her bag and stood, swinging her blazer over her shoulder. The cabin seemed to lean away as she passed, One passenger slipped off his earbuds, trying not to meet her eyes. A couple across the row straightened uncomfortably. The man in 3B stared at the wall of safety cards ahead. Ruth slid back against the galley bulkhead, not meeting her eyes, and Samuel retreated, muttering into his radio. The young woman with the phone kept rolling until Willa stepped past. "Excuse me, I'm just thank you for not moving," she whispered. The comment section, hitting 3,000 now, surged with animated clapping emojis. Down the jet bridge, everything felt thinner. The air, the crowd, the illusion of privacy. At the terminal threshold, a tall man in a steel green suit waited, tapping an electronic badge against his palm. "Ms. Curtis, I'm Thomas, Pacific Equities General Counsel. Please let me apologize on behalf of the airline. We saw the live stream. This should never have happened." Willa's reply was clinical. "Then ensure it never happens again." He blinked, silent. A town car waited at curbside, engine idling, black glass sequined by fresh rain. Willa slid inside, exchanging a brief nod with her driver, a woman with a Bluetooth set half hidden in her curls. "Ms. Curtis, schedules unchanged. Board assembled at 7. Shall I take the call with London?" "Put them through. I need a 5-minute rundown, no mention of the incident." The line clicked. "You'll have what you need, Willa. London's waiting." She settled in, exhaled. "Ready?" The car pulled from the terminal, wheels hissing on wet asphalt. Behind them, the terminal lights stretched into Manhattan. The city blinked, indifferent, awake. In the airline's midtown boardroom, the atmosphere was brittle. CEO Marion Bledsoe tapped the live feed against a thick sheaf of legal paper. Next to her, General Counsel Jansen stared at the social media tracker. 3 million views and climbing. Chief Customer Officer Drexel scrawled numbers on a legal pad, muttering. "Terminations on both, effective immediately," Bledsoe said without preamble. "And reach out to Pacific Equity. We need a direct statement of apology." Jansen added, "Class action risk is through the roof. Pull claims docs for all bias-based removals last year." Drexel stabbed a finger at his notes. Stock fell 12.8% in after hours. Market cap just lost $1.4 billion. We need a settlement, real money, and a real monitor. Draft the policy overhaul memo. Every frontline staff retrained, audited quarterly. Bledsoe nodded sharp. "And push it up industry-wide. FAA oversight for bias audits. I want to see compliance by Q3. From the wall screen, a live ticker scrolled. "Rightful seat now top #worldwide." On cable news, an anchor with perfect hair reviewed a 3-second clip of Willa refusing to stand as the verdict of corporate blared across their chyron. Tonight, yet another airline faces backlash over the targeting of a black executive on a cross-country route. The video, viewed more than 12 million times, prompted immediate terminations and a record $150 million settlement, one of the highest in industry history. FAA regulators announced new oversight mandates by fall. At the Pacific Equity offices, pin drop ordinary, colleagues stopped by Willa's glass-walled office with careful glances. Jenny from Contracts paused in the doorway. "That was you, wasn't it? On the stream this morning." "I'm prepping for the audit. Let's keep focused, please." But as Jenny left, she whispered, "I'm glad you didn't move." Settlement documents spilled from the copier at her elbow. Sirens out on 7th muffled the remainder of the business day. 6 months later, the witness, the woman who'd live-streamed from 2D, carried a different phone as she boarded another flight. Her account, once small, now boasted corporate ads and messages from attorneys. She shrugged as an attendant greeted her by name and offered her a ginger ale. Inboxes filled with requests. "Thanks for what you filmed. We know you didn't have to." She moved on. The world kept flying, but her story had changed the cabin's air. And Willa, she flew once more for work. This time in seat 1A, the attendant offered a smile, handed her the menu without hesitation, and didn't look twice at her name. Willa said thank you, just lightly, no extra weight. Across the aisle, a nervous consultant in a wrinkled suit leaned back, visibly relaxed. The moral bends and loops through lives lived at 35,000 feet. Systems make judgments long before people speak. Bystanding in a crisis is never neutral. Silence can assign guilt with a glance or a shrug. And agency remains, not in thunderous pronouncements but in holding place, letting the world adjust to you, and not the other way around. If you found something of yourself in Willa's story, hold this moment close. Every story that's shared is a step toward changing protocols, and maybe more. Hit subscribe if you want another seat at the table. Pass it on, share it, and remember who sits beside you matters. Tonight, the only authority that counted was the one who did not move, and the whole sky noticed. The sky outside the window was plush blue-black stitched with city lights as the car wound from the midtown tunnel into the shimmer of dawn. Willa kept her gaze fixed straight ahead, face indifferent, hands steady in her lap. Yet behind the smooth arrangement of her posture, her mind sprinted through the coming gauntlet. At the curb, the driver eased to a stop and turned. "Would you like me to wait, Miss Curtis, or should I return in 2 hours?" Willa checked her watch, a habit but also a shield. "Return, please. I'll call if we finish early." Inside the lobby, the echoing hush of marble floors and glass partitions was familiar. Pacific Equity's headquarters was designed for giants, slabs of quartz, panels of steel, a wall of green-veined stone behind the security gate. The guard recognized her. "Morning, Miss Curtis." She stepped through the scanner, badge pre-approved. No second glance, not this time. In the executive elevator, she closed her eyes for 4 measured breaths. Not exhaustion, composure. The boardroom was already alive with tension. The long walnut table flashed with screen glow, and the city's pale light refracted across chrome carafes and bowls of immaculate fruit. Behind the windows, the sky bloomed oyster gray, the kind of morning that erased the difference between beginnings and endings. 4 directors clustered at the far end, voices pitched to precision. Catherine Nguyen, lead independent, tapped her nails, phone held loosely at her side. On the other flank, Arthur Klein, head of risk, scanned markets on his laptop, shades of red in his trading widget. Willa approached her seat, fourth from the chair. As she laid her notes in neat stacks, presentation, summary, old-school binder, the others glanced up. No one mentioned the news, yet each face was knowing. The wordless universe of high-level business, acknowledgement without burden. Catherine angled her chin. "Willa, I saw the headlines this morning." Willa clicked her pen, unreadable. Nothing that will interfere with the audit agenda. Arthur's mouth quirked. Impressive composure. Most would have been on the phone with PR by sunrise. Willa's reply was precise. "The work comes first. Everything else is a variable." The others nodded, half approval, half inquiry. In a room like this, every syllable could shift $1 million, topple a CEO, redirect decades. By 7:15, the full board had gathered. Tablets, folios, cold water. Chairwoman Emily Laird entered, heels muted on the thick carpet. She smiled at Willa, gentle but assessing. "We all saw the news," Laird began, voice velvet with purpose. "I want to say, I'm sorry, Willa. I trust you know how much your presence matters here, if you need time before." "There's no need." Willa said it before anyone else could, polite but final. The silence thinned. Emily nodded, signaling the meeting start. Talk shifted to numbers, risk profiles, performance projections. Audit findings projected onto the wall, ETFs and regulatory hurdles, diversity initiatives that would soon be recast with a sterner edge. Willa contributed, as always, not speaking to fill air but to cut through it. When she offered a critique, the room recalibrated. When she suggested an alternative, Arthur and Catherine took notes. There were moments, a drifting eye, a stutter, where Willa could feel the unsaid heavy in the oxygen. Her face stayed composed, but her brain pinged like radar. Who would see her only as the woman from the video now? Who would see her only as a number in a settlement? But work, real work, proceeded beneath the surface. Catherine moved closer during a break. "If you'd like your name off press outreach today, I'll sign it." Willa shook her head. "If the press calls, I'll answer. I wasn't at fault." Catherine searched her face, then nodded, the two women sharing the kind of glance that built alliances more durable than any memo. Lunch was delivered to the conference room, artisanal sandwiches in layers, glass-bottled juice, salmon sliced thin on dark bread. Through the windows, the city yawned awake, cabs swarming below. The directors lingered in informal clusters. Arter poured coffee and sidled over, voice lowered. Off the record, did they ever apologize properly? Willa's lips gave the slightest twist. The statement came through legal. You know how that feels. "That's not actually the same," Arter said, and to her surprise there was a note of genuine indignation. "It shouldn't be." "It's ordinary," Willa said, more quietly, not for effect, but because it was simply true. He looked as if he'd say more, and for a heartbeat, Willa almost let him. Then she stepped away, resetting the distance. She did not need rescue, not here. At 2, the meeting adjourned. Emily leaned in, voice confidential. "I'm glad you came. If you want to close ranks on policy, let's make it board-wide. Don't let HR or PR lead." "I want a seat on implementation," Willa replied. She was already drafting the plan as she left. A new corporate policy indemnification review, a quorum for all future EEO procedures. Turning headlines into procedure was her true talent. Scandal would ripple outward, but the effect in law, systems, meetings, and hiring could last a decade. She allowed herself, finally in the quiet of her office, to pull up the video. She watched it once, herself unmoving, lips pressed to a patient line while the comments raged. She scrolled through reactions from old colleagues, old adversaries, each one both a weapon and a wound. She exited the app, locked her phone, and stood. Out on 7th Avenue, light danced on the puddles. The press called, and this time she took the interview. On her walk home that day, briefcase swinging, she passed the digital billboards in Times Square. There, tucked between ads for tech startups and vacation resorts, a clip from her incident played again. "Know your worth. Know your seat," the tagline flashed. Below, smaller, a message from the National Businesswomen's Initiative. She barely slowed her stride. That evening, dinner with her daughter, Mara. 2 hours stolen from the week. A moment that had nothing to do with headlines or quarterly returns. Mara slid a salad bowl their way, face mischievous. "You know how many times my phone went off today? People think you're a hero." Willa managed a thin smile. "Heroic would have been silent, I just didn't move." "Exactly," Mara said, grin unwavering. "Most people spend their lives making themselves small. Not you." She raised her glass, eyes brimming with a daughter's pride, a look that couldn't be earned or bought, only lived into. Willa clinked her glass, the moment stretching, golden, between them. The next morning, she met with the Diversity Council at Pacific Equity. The room was nervous, eager, faces bright with anticipation that maybe this scandal had finally shifted something tectonic beneath them. Willa surveyed the group, the analyst with dreadlocks and oversized glasses, the Latina HR VP, the intern who always took notes in colored ink. She began, "We're rewriting the complaints protocol top to bottom. No more anonymous reviews. Every complaint routed to an ombuds office outside the standard chain. Transparency. Consequence. And yes, executives will be monitored too." She saw the buzz shoot through them, a current neither hopeful nor cynical but charged with a new readiness. She nodded at the intern, "You'll help draft." She nodded at the HR VP, "You'll run the first training cohort, next week." As she stood at the head of the table, Willa realized, sometimes the door you hold open is only wide enough for yourself. Today, she could throw it wider. 12 hours and 3 conference calls later, she returned to her apartment, poured a glass of wine, and set her phone on silent for the first time in weeks. She sat by the window as the city retreated under dusk, 1,000 windows lit gold and blue, river trembling in twilight. A ping shook her stillness. She reached instinctively old habits, but instead of news or complaint, it was a message from the young woman on the flight. "Hi Willa, I wanted to thank you again for standing your ground. My video changed my career too. I hope we cross paths. Warmly, Nadira." Willa typed, then erased, typed again. "You help change more than headlines. Next time you're in Midtown, let me buy you lunch." She pressed send and let the phone rest, untouched. At the airline's headquarters, life after the scandal was a reckoning. HR policies now unfurled in thick, unreadable PDFs. The new CEO, brought in from outside, led hall meetings twice weekly. The words "zero tolerance" rolled off everyone's tongues. Managers grumbled at retraining, flight crews quizzed each other on initials and protocol. Social media teams worked around the clock, damping sparks of outrage. But under the corporate initiatives ran something slower, a shift in how people watched, how they waited. Ruth and Samuel's names showed up in training slides. Anonymous Case Study 2024, When Policy Becomes Weapon. The airline posted diversity stats on its main website, sent monthly audits to the FAA, checked bias risk with every customer complaint. A union rep watching from the wings said privately to a reporter, "We all know what happened wasn't just script error. Truth is, people get used to patterns. It takes a storm like that to break the weather." The company bled money, settlements, cancellations, PR makegoods. But the bleeding was also a kind of cleansing. With it, the old mold washed away. In airports at first the effect was hard to see, but in lounges and lineups, especially in the upfront seats, conversations changed. A businessman hesitated before remarking on an upgrade look. A flight attendant, reading a name from a printed pass, paused and made eye contact, a question in her smile. "Is this correct? Thank you, Ms. Jackson." A middle-aged man in Seattle, ticketed on a red-eye, watched as a younger black woman sat in 4A, documents in hand. 15 years ago, he might have grumbled, "Are you in the right seat?" Tonight, he bit his tongue. Instead, he offered to stow her bag. Small as snowflakes, the change accumulated. At a conference in Chicago, Willa crossed paths with Ruth. The former flight attendant presented at a panel on airline justice reforms, hair tucked in a soft headband, voice steadier than it had been at 30,000 feet. "It's not enough to follow rules," Ruth told a crowd of peers. "You have to know when they're wrong. What I learned is fear makes protocol a weapon. So now my job is training others to pause." She caught Willa's eye at the back of the room, nodded. A gesture seeking neither forgiveness nor erasure, but continuity. In the coffee break that followed, Ruth approached. "Ms. Curtis, I want to thank you. I wouldn't be here if not for what happened." Willa nodded, the words costing and giving something at once. "You're doing the work now. That counts more." Ruth inhaled, glanced at her shoes, then back up. "I hope someday it's normal." Willa smiled faintly. "If enough of us refuse to move, it will be." Word got around. Willa was invited to speak on a network panel. She agreed, one slot prime, but with the caveat, "You may ask about systems, not just my story." When the host, all veneers and perfect sympathy, tried to press for tears, Willa kept the talk to solutions, oversight, and accountability. Change isn't about one person. It's about designing out the traps and tripwires before someone falls in. Days blurred, but the policy shift deepened and held. Other firms reached out, major banks, tech companies, other airlines. "Will you consult on detection? Will you lead the post-incident reforms?" Willa agreed, selectively, rarely, always on her terms. She hired Mara part-time, not just for family, but because she needed someone with her sharpness and no fear of speaking truth. The two worked late, learning how old powers could echo in even the newest software, the freshest HR script. A year after the incident, the press died down. The hashtags faded, replaced by others, the world unforgiving in its hunger for the next outrage. But on that airline, on others, the risk of a wrongful removal dropped by 70% in audit. Anonymous complaints about looking out of place, were now routed automatically to a review board diverse enough to see more than suspicion. Nadira, the bystander-turned-viral chronicler, won an award for citizen journalism. In her acceptance speech, she credited not herself, but the women who teach us to stay, not move when protocol wobbles. Her account grew, now mentoring others in digital storytelling. Sometimes she and Willa met for coffee in the city, bemoaned board politics and travel delays, found laughter in the odd collisions of fame. On her last flight home for the year, Willa boarded with Mara beside her. As they reached their row, a flight attendant smiled. "Welcome, Ms. Curtis." No question about initials, no intrusion, just the small courtesy of being seen and not scrutinized. Mara leaned over as they buckled in. "Do you ever worry it'll happen again, somewhere, somehow?" Willa considered this, the weight of lived experience pressing gently at her shoulders. Then she answered, "I know it might, but now I won't be alone, and neither will you." The hum of the engines built. Outside, the runway's edge blinked gold, and inside, at least this once, the seat was not an argument but a right. Above them the sky opened, endless, possible, unguarded, and waiting for what came next. That summer, Pacific Equity's new ombudsman took her place, first in the city, then in the nation, as companies scrambled to copy the transparency initiative. Willa watched the headlines recede, but she knew the real endgame was not in being celebrated or quoted, but in being forgotten, when the refusal to move was simply ordinary, unremarked, expected. On a plain day in late July, she walked through the terminal, boarding pass in hand, no fanfare. Sunlight flickered through the glass, people bustling, no one watching. As she settled into her seat, a flight attendant new to the job leaned in and whispered, "I haven't had to enforce the middle initial thing since I started. I heard you might be the reason." Willa smiled, offering a nod as ordinary as breathing. "Then we're both in the right place." The attendant moved on, the plane filled, engines whined. The world didn't pause. The news cycle spun. People vied for upgrades, schedules slipped and recovered, business soared and shuddered. But for 1,000 unseen moments, a barrier had been moved by those who refused to. As the jet lifted over the city, Willa glanced out the window just as the angled sun caught a swirl of cloud, lighting it gold. Dignity, she thought, not given, just kept, sometimes by force but more often by quiet insistence. By not letting go of your place, no matter who or what asked you to shrink, to stand, to wait your turn. It's not noise or spectacle that changes the sky, but the steady, unmoving act of staying in your seat until the world finally moves with you. And somewhere she knew someone would see her, woman, leader, traveler, simply as a passenger entitled to the place she'd claimed. Nothing more, nothing less. A message as wide as the sky, stretching forward. Forward.